MC and I'm moderating today, but I'm from conferencemcs.com, which is the first of its kind, a sort of global network of moderators, facilitators and event hosts. And what is happening here today? Well, we are going to be talking about recruitment, but not yet. We're talking about recruitment, the Great Recruitment Challenge at 11:50, but first of all, we're going to be talking about taking a seat at the table. And I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of Felicia Asadu.
Asadu, well done.
Senior Marketing Manager for CRANT, and she is going to moderate this panel. So thank you, take it away.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So, as Claire just said, I'm Senior Marketing Manager for CVent, but I also am one of the co-founders of the Diverse Speaker Bureau, which is up there on the screen. And so we help to find speakers that are diverse, as it says. And when our clients come to us and they book speakers, they can just trust that all the speakers are diverse. And so we often have lots of different conversations with our speakers about the various things they're going through and the challenges and all the things that they've faced. And one of the biggest things that I know, well, some of our speakers have faced is imposter syndrome, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm joined by two lovely panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves as I ask them their first question. So, first question is, I'm going to pose it to Joseph. What is imposter syndrome? So if you introduce yourself and let us know.
I love that I get this one. So I'm Joseph, founder and MD of a company called Planet. We're an online service that supports any type of event planner, corporate agency or freelance, source secure suppliers. What is imposter syndrome? So I was going to say I'm lucky enough, I'll get onto that, but I've dealt with imposter syndrome since I was 6, and I would say feeling like an imposter since I was 6. I'm a gay man from the northeast in a family full of boys, a heteronormative environment, and I was very different. I was cartwheeling, twirling, flipping, and realized quite quickly that I was very different from my surroundings and my environment. So I started to change, I started to edit, I started to present myself differently. And what I realized from that young age is that's carried through my entire life, but in different stages. So whether that's getting a new job, whether that's getting a new promotion, I still felt I was in an environment where I was different or didn't feel good enough or felt that I wasn't in the right place. So I started to define feeling like an imposter as being somewhere where you either don't feel 100% confident or comfortable, that you then start to internally, I was going to say damage, and that's a bit deep, but you start to internally maybe attack yourself in an anxious way to be like, are you good enough? Should you be here? Are you presenting correctly, etc. So I think that's kind of how I see feeling like an imposter.
Yeah. And I'm going to pose a similar question to you. Would you agree with those? I mean, obviously you can't relate to being a 6-year-old boy, but...
No. I would definitely be an imposter in that environment.
But in your interpretation, as you introduce yourself, let us know what you think to that.
Yeah, so my name is Laura Capalabra. I am now a coach and workplace wellbeing specialist. I come at it from a not 6-year-old boy environment. So the reason why this area is really important for me is because I have been always quite an ambitious person in my career, and what that has meant is that I found myself in situations where I was very regularly the youngest in the room, and for me, being the youngest in the room, and quite often in male-dominated rooms, it made me feel very out of place. So I completely agree with your explanation, your definition. I think for me, it's definitely a feeling. I hate the word syndrome, and whenever I talk to people, just ignore the word syndrome. It's not medical. It's a feeling. It's emotion. It goes up and down. So I totally agree with that. And I think for me, it's being in an environment where you don't feel that you deserve to be there. And that can be whatever reason that might be. So there's your expectation, your belief of what somebody that should be in that environment is or looks like or behaves in a certain way, and what you believe in yourself as well. So in my experience, it was kind of entering rooms and boardrooms and meetings and things being a lot younger than everybody else, and quite often being the only female in a room, and thinking that I'm very different and why should they listen to me or trust me.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that. And I just wondered, have any of you ever felt like that? Hands up if you've ever felt a bit like, oh, should I be here? Yeah, okay, so that's should I be here? What about I don't think I have the skills to be here? Yeah, okay. Have you ever questioned something you've been given, like a promotion or even the job itself? You ever thought, oh, how did I get that? Yeah, some nods as well. I like that some of you are like, no, actually, no. no, I deserve my jobs. Yeah, fair enough. But you mentioned something there about, us being the only female, and I did find us a stat. KPMG survey that was done of women in leadership roles or executive roles in 2020 said that 75% of executive women reportedly felt that they'd experienced that imposter syndrome at certain points in their career. Funny, there's mostly women here today. And we had discussed this, is this a female issue or not? Laura, what do you think?
So in my experience, being a coach, obviously not being a female, but relating to men, my experience as a coach, actually the vast majority of my male coaching clients talk to me about feeling like an imposter, weirdly more so than the females. So when we were talking about the stat, it kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I was like, my experience of coaching clients around these feelings is very much males that come to me. Now, I don't know whether or not it's because they like the idea of having a syndrome, there's a badge for it, and they're like, I've got this, I need to deal with it, and whether or not it's that kind of approach. Or maybe women don't feel the need to talk about it because it's something they kind of experience so often and feel so not comfortable with, but see it as part of their day-to-day, that they don't feel the need to talk to a coach about it. But I definitely speak to more of my male clients about it than I do about my female clients.
I find that really interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting when we looked at that stat.
Yeah, I think men probably struggle more with articulating it, and I think if you're in a coaching environment, I did therapy for 2 years before I realised it was all anxiety and feeling and what that actually was. And I think in a closed environment, perhaps men are more open to talk about it, whereas I think a lot of people here, obviously everyone here is female, pretty much, and you are open to nod your head to moments to say, no, I felt that, I felt this way, no, I felt out of place here. Whereas I think if it was a room full of men, would they have fully said that? Because a lot of men I meet are like, no, I'm the best, I'm great, I'm strong, I'm this, I'm that, when actually they're not. And it's just that perception that we all have of what this is, and it's just attached to women. But I don't believe that. I think it's very much encompassing for everyone, because it's as we talked about, it's a feeling, it's anxiety that's exemplified specific to an area which is business, or not feeling like you're not good enough or have the skills to do it, and then we've whacked a label on it and we're all like, we've got imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
that's it. And I agree, I've took that to the bank now. I've ruined goodbye syndrome. I don't have it. I feel like an imposter sometimes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little second. But I think you mentioned something, I can't remember exactly what the conversation, but I remember writing down tokenism versus opportunity, and I thought it was important because when I often talk about diversity, I often get asked to speak on panels, and quite often they're diversity panels, which is quite annoying, and I have a session about that later. But my specialism is marketing, and so it's quite odd that I get asked to speak on panels about diversity. But then I wonder, when I do get asked to speak, I often wonder, is it just because you want to try and fill your quota? I'm not that good a speaker, so maybe they don't think I'm that much of an expert. So it's almost like that mixture of imposter syndrome. Am I a token? I don't even know. I can't figure it out anymore. So what do we do? Do we take the opportunity and just run with it whilst feeling like an imposter, or what should we do with that? What do you think?
I think we should take the opportunity. I think say yes as much as you can, but I think challenge why you're on a panel or why you're being given an opportunity. If you are at any point concerned, rather than just assuming that there's reasons, if you do believe there might be another reason that it is tokenism, asking them and actually getting them to explain why, calling people out on things, and if it is a tokenism thing, having that really honest conversation with them and trying to educate them why would they do that, and looking at it in a different way. But I think take opportunities. I don't think, for me, there's no benefit to yourself. There's benefit maybe to them of you doing it, but there's no benefit to missing an opportunity yourself if it's a positive opportunity. Obviously, if it's a positive opportunity, but I think call people out if you do think it's tokenism. I didn't do that when I was younger, but I think with hindsight, that's what I should have done.
And would you say the same, and Joseph, feel free to answer, in a business work environment? So obviously speaking sessions, I've got the opportunity to say, no, I don't want to do that one, I'll do that one. But at work, maybe, I don't know how that would work if there's tokenism at work, or, we're just, hey, Laura, come out and do this thing, roll you out in front of the board or something. I mean, what do you think?
Take it to the bank. Honestly,
Take
I think
that opportunity.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and it's awful if it is tokenism, and it's awful, and you can look at it from a negative perspective and say, and if you challenge it, and it turns out it is. But the other side is, how does this affect me, and how do I feel about it? Because you have two opportunities here. One, to say, actually, I don't feel comfortable about it because I'm being rolled out for a reason. Or you can say, fuck yes, I'm being rolled out, and I'm going to take this opportunity, and I'm going to be like, brilliant, yeah, I'm going to be in front of the board, you're going to know my name, and you're going to push me forward. Like, I think it's understanding that when you're questioning yourself, feeling like an imposter, and that's great because that means you're not an imposter. You're questioning yourself because you're self-critical and you're self-aware and you want to be better. You want to do the best. So how do we amplify that, and how do we grab every opportunity and go, how am I going to be the best at that? Did I speak the best? No. How can I speak better next time? And I think it's, for me, I love feeling like an imposter because that's what I believe makes me a high performer, and what I use as my catalyst for I'm going to be the best, because I'm secretly judging everything that I do. And I'm like, how do I, be better? But yeah, I think take the opportunity and change the mindset looking at it, because otherwise it's not going to be that fun and you're not going to enjoy it. And you should use everything that's in your arsenal to do it.
I think also if you don't feel like an imposter sometimes, you're not challenging yourself enough. I think to exactly that point, if at points you feel, oh, this is a bit too much for me, this is a bit out of my comfort zone, that's a good thing. Push yourself, don't make it so bad that anxiety kicks a high kind of level. But actually, if it feels a bit uncomfortable and you feel a bit out of your depth, that means you're challenging yourself. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for development.
Yeah.
It's growth.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Growth, yeah.
It's like Brené Brown, who, if you don't know her, is fantastic. She talks about being in the arena, and she says if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked and pushing yourself and challenging yourself, then you're not going to continue up. And there is this unfortunate thing that growth is normally harsh. It's normally, it is difficult, but for you to surpass that growth allows you to then keep going. And anyone who's ever done a huge amount of growth and success always talks about it's like the hardest road, because they've had to challenge themselves further to push beyond, oh, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel this. If you move beyond that, the next thing you're elevated and you feel comfortable and you're like, okay, what's the next thing? Okay, I'm now going to try and be MD. And then you get to that point, you're like, oh God, right, okay, how do we move on? And I think it's just that ladder step that you're always going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's just how you own it.
I love that. It reminds me of, those speeches you never forget when you're in school. And when we were in year 6, just at the end of primary school, and they say, right now, you are a big fish in a small pond or something like that. And then you go to, and they say when you go to secondary school, your fish is the same size, but the pond is just so much bigger. And then you'll grow into that pond, So I just imagine it with what you were just saying. If you stay in that pond, you'll just outgrow it, to be honest. And you think you're the biggest thing and it's great. And now I'm really comfortable. But quite frankly, you're kind of suffocating because the pond is too small. So you need to get into the bigger pond, feel a bit like an imposter for a bit, and then adjust. So you've mentioned this. I've put, should we stop saying imposter syndrome? We have mentioned it. I mentioned it because I think I read an article recently where it said it is quite damaging to women, because if we're associating that 75% stat to women, sorry for the couple of men in the room, but then we're labeling, well, women tend to feel like they have imposter syndrome. Do I? Yes, I do. I have imposter syndrome. That's my badge. Boom, I've got it. Done. How do I overcome it? And then we start trying to do that. But actually, that just seems quite damaging in itself because it's a predefined label. So I know you've mentioned it, but what do you think we should be thinking about this in terms of the syndrome?
I think get rid of the word syndrome, call it feelings. We have imposter-like feelings. We'll have times we feel like an imposter, and we'll have times we're actually pretty confident, in different parts of our life. Like, we'll have moments like, I've got this, I know what I'm doing, and oh, holy shit, the next moment. And that kind of feeling a little bit of anxiety, that little bit of panic, the little bit of overwhelm, and I'm out of my comfort zone, they're the feelings of being an imposter. It's not a syndrome. It's not permanent. Even people that I work with in a coaching capacity that talk about this imposter syndrome all the time, there are parts of their lives that are very comfortable and very confident. It's just that and it tends to be work, but it isn't always work. It can quite often be family life and things like that. As soon as you make people realise that it's not constant, and it's a feeling and it comes and goes, then it's much easier to change your mindset. And kind of, we talked a lot about the idea of actually thinking about it as a positive thing, and knowing it's growth and it's a challenge for you. So I think get rid of the word syndrome, think about it as a feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's, when you think about it, it's initially anxiety, isn't it? It's anxiety, and then you say it's a feeling, and it's understanding how do you manage it. And I think as long as you have the tips and tricks to manage feeling like an imposter and be able to challenge yourself. I challenge myself all the time, and I'm like, who has told you that? Like, oh God, you're shit. You're going to be terrible on this panel. I'm like, who's told you that? No one. I call my brain Becky the brain, and she's constantly being I won't, you can finish that with the B word. But, and I love humor, so I'm like, Becky, you need to just shut up. Like, I can't deal with it. But how do you challenge yourself and question your thoughts? And if you're ever, because it's this thing, if you allow your thoughts to conjugate and you think you're shit, and you continue, you start to catastrophize, which means you then become this role and it gets worse, and then maybe it does become a syndrome because you're in this trapped thought. Whereas if it's an emotion and we see it and realize this is an ebb and flow, we take a deep breath, we say we're fabulous, and we move on. Like that, I think it's understanding how do you manage that emotion and how do you challenge it, and then also looking beyond, if you can't do it in a work environment and you're feeling nervous that because you're in a new role and you feel like you're not good enough or you're making mistakes, but no one's telling you that, brilliant. Go to your manager and say, can I ask you a question? What I'm thinking currently is X, Y, and Z. Can you validate this thought process for me? And if you have a great manager and open and safe environment, they should be able to come back to you and say, just to let you know, you're brilliant. This isn't correct. This isn't correct. X, Y, and Z. If you feel like you need extra support or how we can help you do better, let's make a plan for it. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. And when we were chatting about the other days, it's all around communication and understanding how do we communicate and how do we manage our emotions and make sure that we create work environments that support and grow us, rather than us being isolated in our brain thinking, and Becky's in the back going nuts and you don't say anything, and that's when it becomes quite bad. But
I think that support network is a really important thing, and I think absolutely in the workplace, but I think it can go beyond that as well. I think, you know, we've all probably got friends and family members that are cheerleaders for us and are our little champions, and as a fellow Brené lover, you know, the kind of the support network and the trigger network. And she talks very much about this idea of who's in your support network, who is there to look out for you. They're not necessarily going to agree with everything all the time, but they're going to support you and they've got your back. And then there are the trigger network people, and they can still be your friends and they can still be your colleagues, but knowing that there'll be certain environments that they will cause you to trigger and they'll make you feel a bit uncomfortable or a bit anxious about something, whatever it might be. And being aware and being able to kind of put people into these two different camps of who do I need to go to when I'm feeling like an imposter? Well, I'm going to hopefully go to someone in my support network rather than someone in my trigger network. And so being able to identify who those different people are, who you need to go to at different points, and if they can be in the workplace, even better. So just being able to be aware of who those people are and have those conversations, I think, are really important.
I love that. And I feel really lucky at the moment. I've got a really nice boss who, you know, she's always asked those questions in performance appraisal, what can I be doing? And she's opened up the door for us to have those conversations. She talks to me about her children. She talks to me about her dog, you know, so it's not just that business relationship. And then when she does say, well, what can I be doing to help you? I have actually taken that opportunity to say, what can I do better? Where am I falling down? And then we just talk about it. And I think that environment is just so important to be able to validate those feelings. I really like that. So, bit of Alanis Morissette for you. I'm not going to sing. Normally I would. But I've put some lyrics on the screen because I went to Alanis Morissette last night. I feel overwhelmed. You know, she was that good. But I'll read them out. It says, sometimes it's never quite enough. If you're flawless, then you win, my love. Don't forget to win first place. Don't forget to keep that smile on your face. Be a good boy. Try a little harder. You've got to measure up. Make me prouder. How long before you screw it up? How many times do I have to tell you to hurry up? With everything I do for you, the least you can do is keep quiet. And this is her talking through those emotions. It's called Perfect, the song. Talking through those emotions that she felt as a child. And I think a lot of this stuff does come in when you're younger, of hurry up, come on, do better, make me proud, come on, make me proud. Oh, you won, oh great, you got to win, da-da-da-da. So all of that, I think, kind of follows you. And all that stuff you were saying about what goes on in your head.
Well, it sounds like Becky.
This is Becky.
She's a nightmare, honestly.
And so you've already given us quite a few good practical tips. But what can we do really? You know, here, I'll skip to the next one, where it says you should be doing these things. Should we? Should we have these expectations for ourselves?
So I've got a couple of things here. One is ban the word should. I don't know how many times I've told clients, ban the word should. Anytime we say, oh, I should be doing this, I should be better, I should be this, I should be that, to your point, says who? Who says we should be doing something? If we ban the word should and take it and try and use it as an opportunity to say, I get to, or I want to, or I could do, change the language that we use with ourselves, I think can make a big difference. I think the other thing that was a bit of a realisation for me was when I realised that if I was feeling like an imposter in those situations, I realised that actually I just got to laugh at the people that had entrusted me and think, well, I've got no idea what I'm doing. So they've obviously got no idea what they're doing because they've entrusted me. So let's just laugh at them for being silly anyway. So that's always kind of even if I feel out of depth, I'm like, well, they're more out of depth because they put me in this position. So that's generally my attitude. If I find myself in a situation where I'm like, I shouldn't be here, I'm like, well, they put me there, so they're even more silly than me. So
It's like picturing people in their pants.
yeah.
Yeah, because then you look more silly than I do. I get that.
I think it's funny. I think it just comes back, for me, it's that thing of, if you're asking yourself if you're an imposter, you're not. And I think that self-criticalness is, how do you challenge that self-criticalness? Like, what questions have you built up to ask yourself? Who has told you this? Is this true? There's a guy, Josh King from EMC3, and he writes all his down on a list, and he crosses out what he has control out of, and then he's left with what he does have control of, and then he's like, okay, wow, there's like 90% is gone just because I've either made it up or I've let external forces change my perception of myself. And I just look at the governments at the current moment, and if you think we're imposters and you're challenging yourself, God help, Trump and Boris and everyone else, because do you think they won't even think that they're an imposter? They think they are the shit, and they're not. So you've got to remind yourself that if you are challenging yourself and asking yourself, am I good enough? You're going to push that. You're going to take that and be like, I will be good enough. I'll stand up taller. I'll laugh at the fact that my bosses have put me here, but I'll still do as much as I can. That's best of my ability. And then you can walk away proud. And I think, for me, it's all mindset and having the tips and tricks that you need to push past that instant feeling that you get, and like, how do you let that feeling dissipate and think, laugh through it and move on.
Yeah, I love that. And with that, I think I'll ask, do you have any questions to ask this panel? They've given you lots of tips and tricks. Or would anyone like to share? It's give you that moment you're like, I have a problem. No? Are we all feeling good?
But I was actually thinking that. I was thinking, if you stand up every day and say, should I be here? What am I? You're then questioning yourself, not in a bad way, but you're going, how can I get better? What can I do? You're actually putting that thought process in. Whereas if you're saying, I'm amazing every morning, to that degree, then you're not working to be better or hard. You're just. I'm sorry, I forget that they're recording this. I'll say that again. If you get up every day and you say, I am amazing, I've got this, without any question ever, then there's no urge to move forward and do better, which is that subtlety, isn't it? Because half of you saying, shut up, Becky, I'm fabulous. But then half of you is also saying, am I though? Because you need that balance, don't you? You need that split personality side of it to make you improve.
100%, and I think there's this big thing about, so when you what is your morning ritual? Because mine is, I'll tell my things that I'm good at, and I'll tell my things I need to improve at, and that I know that is on my list. And it's also knowing, like everyone bangs on about manifestation, I live for it, and it's, I am this, like I am successful, I need to be more successful and everything else. But it's understanding how do you remove the limiting beliefs that we've been inherited either from our parents, from our teachers. I've got someone in my life way back when who told me, you will never amount to anything, and I'm like, listen, is that Becky, or who's told Becky that line? And it's understanding what are your limiting beliefs, and how do you challenge yourself every morning to be better and to try and have a positive mindset. Because don't get me wrong, there's days where I think I am horrendous at what I do, but it's understanding how you move past that and then use that again, as you say, is to push you forward. I think it's a huge motivator, and I think that's where this comes in for high performers, and that anxious side of feeling like an imposter, use that energy for good, because otherwise you're just taking the negative from it, and that's the worst part of it, I think, if people don't use it.
Yeah, I agree. And like one of the things I've got out of this, thank you very much, is I know I've been told several times about the power of writing things down, visualizations, vision boards, all that kind of stuff, affirmations. You know, there's just so many. When you talk about high performers, I know high performers tend to have routines like that. I get up, I run, I eat, I do this, I do. It's very kind of like process oriented to help them to challenge themselves, but to stay on the course. And I think if we can take anything away from what we've heard, it's that kind of, you know, if you need to write it down, put it to paper, because then it becomes a thing that you can either say, yes, I'm doing, or no, I'm crossing out because it's not true.
And it's the language as well. And I think the big thing here is the should. If you remove should, like, oh, I should be more successful. I should be. No, like, what are you doing now? Like, what is your presence? What are you presently saying? Like, today I am going to be productive. Okay, how am I going to be productive? Let me write down the 6 things that is going to make me productive and make me push forward, because then you've got tangible things that you're attaching yourself to, and if they're written down, then it goes to Becky, and God, Becky can push you forward.
Here you go, Becky. I see you have a question.
Yes. I was just going to add to some of the comments about imposter syndrome, and you know, I've sat in many a meeting, big, like all agency meetings with marketing directors and strategy directors, and thought, holy shit, what am I doing here? But I think at the end of the day as well, we're all humans, and we're all there for the same reason, is to solve a challenge for a client or whatever we're doing. And there's been so many times the younger me would have sat there and been really nervous and not said anything, and then someone has said the thing that I'm thinking, and you're just like, why didn't I speak up? And, you know, if you've prepared for that meeting, half the people in that room definitely haven't even looked at the deck. Guaranteed.
So true.
So if you have, and you have got something to say it.
I love
and
that.
no one is ever going to say, that's a fucking stupid thing to say in a meeting like that anyway. So what have you got to lose? I remember going to an all-agency meeting where I actually replaced Grant, our creative director, but no one even acknowledged who was in the room, and I got called Grant the whole meeting. And I was like, why didn't I just say, I'm really sorry, I'm not Grant, I am me? And I was just too nervous in front of all those people to do it, so I got called the name of a male colleague the whole time.
Do you want to be Grant?
That is hilarious. I feel really bad for that story. That is awful. I'm sorry that you were called Grant.
Yeah. My name's not Grant.
This is Kath.
Yeah.
But also, you just said you were going to say, I'm sorry. As though I'm sorry I'm not Grant.
I'm sorry for you, 'cause I messed up.
I'm not sorry I'm not Grant.
Thank you very much.
One thing I'll add on that, and this is just a free thing that I go with, a tip that probably doesn't relate to this. One thing that's pushed me forward in success is people do not prepare for meetings, and I tell every person, how do you want to get forward? 30 minutes block out before every meeting. Know what the fuck you're talking about in that meeting, and think about the points you're going to contribute. Because if it's not an effective meeting and you haven't prepared for it, then you're just going to be sat gassing air. And I hate ineffectiveness. So if you're going in and like, what are we discussing today? Okay, we need to solve this, or we have a creative thing. I've already researched 6 different ideas, different bits, and I'm going to go and I'm going to contribute. And that pushes you forward in that table, and all of a sudden they know exactly you're here, you're present. Or you can sit and you can think, okay, I've got an idea, maybe I'll add it in. Prep, and it goes for every aspect of your job. Do it. I always block out 30 minutes before any meeting, pitch, introductions, anything. I did it a little bit for this, but it didn't go the way I planned, but it's fine.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi. I manage a team, so looking at it from a different perspective, you mentioned earlier about a tip in reviews and saying, like, what can I do? Are there any other things or tips that, like, practical ways that as managers we can support our team making sure they don't have imposter feelings?
We're all mouth open. We're like,
yeah, so I can go. So yeah, asking kind of clear questions like that. What can I do to help? I think some basics like, is there anything worrying you at the moment? But I think also just listening to the way they talk about themselves and listening to the way they accept briefs. So if you're briefing them on something, listen, look at their face. Are they looking nervous? Are they kind of going, oh, are you sure? Am I? Yeah, okay. Listening to them. and picking up before even a review point. I think the more you can kind of go, you've got this, I've got full faith in you, I think you're going to be great, whatever. I think as you can do that in a day-to-day type conversation, it's that constant reassurance for that person that hopefully you trust them to do their job. But I'd just say listen to that person in terms of how are they communicating? Do they seem confident, or are they a little bit nervous when they're kind of saying they'll come back to you on a piece of work? If they're trying to get somebody else in rather than put themselves in a meeting, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I used to manage a team of 9 in my first agency when I was head of events, and there was an eclectic mix of people who joined, so straight from university to people who had only been a couple of years, and I used to direct report. And my biggest thing, and they were all female, fabulous, and my biggest thing is that they were nervous and they were lacking confidence because they were learning whilst also doing the job. And the big thing that I realized is gas up your team members. The biggest thing that I can say is for you to take a moment and go, I would do weekly one-to-ones, and the first thing I'd do is I'd always take a note of something they've done really well that week, something, a task, a part of a job, anything else, to first start that conversation. So I'd sit down and I'd be like, Laura, that was an amazing panel, for all of a sudden to create a safe space for them to think, okay, thank you. And then you're asking, okay, how are you? Like, what's going on? And then you can move into the questions of, is there anything that's concerning you? Or when you're briefing, is there anything about this task that I'm setting that you're unsure of or you want to ask questions? Because a lot of it comes down to, if they don't fully take the brief or fully understand what they're meant to do, then all of a sudden you have doubt. Oh God, I wonder how they're expecting this to be delivered. Or you start to question, am I going to deliver this in the right way? Will he be happy? Let's just remove that and communicate effectively, and make sure that if you have any issues or you have any doubts, come back to me. Let's quickly go back over it and you're fine. I think the issue that I've witnessed from my predecessors who tried to teach me is they would leave things questionable, and I'd be there like doubting it. I'd be like thinking of 65 routes of how I could do it, which is the best ways, and then I'd like list them off, tick them off, and then I'd go back with the one route and they'd be like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, fucking hell, that took a long time. But I should have just asked at that point, as you say, like, can I just validate this is exactly what you want and what you're expecting?
I love that. We have another question coming in. Just going to give you one last bit there on the management tip. I failed at something, and that's why I will give you this. And it was trying to match what someone's good at with their workload at the right time. And I'll explain what that means very briefly. That's me saying, do you enjoy doing data work? Oh my gosh, no, it's not my forte. Got it. Great. I understand that. What do you enjoy? You're creative. Great. Here's your creative stuff. I want to teach you data. Is that okay? Can we give you this little task? And you can partner with this person who's really good at data. And so building up someone's weaknesses whilst giving them enough of what they enjoy, I think is a really great balance to then ease them into stuff that they would typically go, oh, I can't do it. Actually, you can, but you just probably need a bit of time and coaching. That'll be my last bit to add. Another question.
Hi, it's not a question, it's more like an ad or sharing experience. I'm quite new in the role, so a couple of months ago, I was in this amazing conference meeting and whatsoever. Beautiful views of London. I love London. I've been living here for 3 years, but I was still kind of like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Even during the pandemic, that's very good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Anyway, so I was in this meeting, and suddenly I just stopped listening because I was questioning myself, like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I was new, I'm young, it was my first step into the industry, blah, blah, with all these managers. And then I spent, it was maybe 5-6 hours meeting, and I spent 4 hours just locked, like, what am I doing here? I was kind of like nearly crying. I got home, I was just like, oh my God. But the point here is that I stopped enjoying it. So I think with all these questions and these stages of our life, I think that we stop ourselves of enjoying something that we probably love. So I said to myself, okay, like, no question yourself, like, just enjoy it. I agree that it's important and it's good to say, like, am I good enough? Because, it's like it makes you step out of your comfort zone, but we forget to enjoy something that we love. So yeah, we'll add kind of like, don't forget enjoying it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a great
100%.
point.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
I think with that as well, that comes down to being that thing about being present and allowing Becky to talk so loud. And I do that. I've spent so many years going inside of myself and not being present and not aware, and it has an effect on your nervous system, which affects your memory. So you have mind blocks of not being able to recall memory because you've gone internal. And again, it comes down to what is your tips and tricks to allow you to become present again. My friends laugh at me because I'll be on a night out and I'll be in environments and I'll go, I need to go for a quick 15-minute walk. And I'll go for 15 minutes and have a breathing exercise that brings me present again to not allow my thoughts to overtake. So it's understanding what is, for you, what is your trigger, what's happened, and how do you then put something in place for you to think, okay, I need to take a minute to be able to come back and enjoy yourself. And it's completely normal, but it's, there's so many techniques for different elements, and we were talking about scale of feeling, I feel a bit like an imposter, or to the point of where you are no longer present because your thoughts have overtaken. It's that scale of what do you do at those different stages, and what are the techniques that help you personally. That's, anyway, I'll add
I
more
love
to
that.
that.
It's
Sorry.
a little bit of cognitive behavioural therapy
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, sorry, I live for therapy. If you've never done it, I would invest
Therapy
in it.
is
You do
awesome.
not need to do it if you can do it when you're positive, you can do it when you're
Yeah.
negative. It is the techniques that it teaches you will enhance everything that you do in terms of communicating and emotional intelligence if you want to manage people. So I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I love the idea that your friends are going, where's Joseph gone? No, he's taken Becky off to tell her off.
Honestly, I'm not kidding. My friends howl at me. I'm like, I need a 15. I'm off. And they'll see me doing zigzags. I was doing it at Glastonbury, even though I was walking loads. So I did 200,000 steps. But if you know yourself, I know myself and I know what I need to do as a technique to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm being present and being the best that I can be, rather than
Love that.
staying there and not, and then having that effect on other people around me.
Yeah.
So Becky was busy at Glastonbury as well then. This is interesting.
Becky was nuts at Glastonbury because as soon as you take my sleep out of the way, and again, it's the things like if you don't sleep as you normally
Yeah, it's
sleep, you
well-being.
don't have routine, if you don't eat well, instantly, then you are more susceptible to the perhaps mental triggers than you normally are. So yeah, Becky was wild at Glastonbury.
I love that. We've got a few minutes. Do you want to just a final sum up with what you're saying, or are you done? You said it all.
Oh, you've done.
Oh, you done.
Final word.
Yeah, if at any point you feel like an imposter, it will pass. You'll be awesome at something else. This is just an opportunity to push yourself a little bit harder. Listen to yourself. So if you're feeling that, ask yourself why you're feeling that. And then if you need to confirm it with somebody else or validate it with somebody else, go for it. But otherwise, enjoy it. As I said, just laugh. If you're feeling a bit like an imposter, try and find the funny side of it, whether or not that's laughing at the person that's put you in the situation or laughing at yourself and going, this is a great opportunity. And to your point about feeling joy, just enjoy the ride. You know, there's some rubbish stuff that goes on, but as long as you can kind of focus on finding your enjoyable path, whatever that looks like, then you'll have a good time.
Fantastic. I would love to say thank you to you both for joining me on this wonderful panel, and thank you for contributing, sharing your stories, asking questions.